Flirting always has to be like plausibly denied.
What do you think is the biggest mistake people make on a first date?
They come in to a date like a judge.
Today's guest is Jacob, blogger behind Put a Num on It, challenges conventional wisdom with his unique perspectives on relationships and societal trends.
Can you tell me about micromarriages?
Women marry up in income, men marry up in education a little bit.
A lot of guys who are like, oh, I want to marry a girl who has a master's degree. In fact, I've never heard a guy say that.
The problem with mimetic desire is kind of blind.
Like, I found my husband based on intuition.
When people see a couple that's mismatched on attractiveness, they like really get riled up. The male feminists who are like still single, like in their late 30s, and dating women exclusively in like very progressive spaces. But there's some reason why, like, they're still on the market.
Yeah.
Desiree Podcast.
So I'll share a random story, but it's topical. The drug called modafinil, which is originally an anti-narcolepsy drug, but Silicon Valley discovered it really helped you like stay up and pull all-nighters with very little side effects.
I took modafinil one time, and it was the best drug I've ever taken, and it was amazing. And I decided that I should never take it again.
I had the same thing with Adderall. I took Adderall and I played soccer for 3 hours and then wasn't hungry for dinner. I was like, this is great. And then I never took it again.
Yeah.
But my wife needed some modafinil to write her thesis. And so this is the sort of things you do in relationship is, I was in Colombia, where it's legal over the counter. So I was like, oh, I'll go to the pharmacy and pick up some for her. And I went to the pharmacy and asked them for modafinil, and they gave me 3 pills. And I said, okay, do you have any more? And they're like, no, this is all we stock. We stock 1 box of 3 pills. And I went to 5 other pharmacies, and they all had either 1 or 2 boxes with 3 pills each. Where I think like in the US, when it's sold like in packs of 20.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And they're like, I think in Colombia, just if people are sleepy, they take a nap. They're never like, oh, I'm sleepy, but they need to hustle hard on this thing. I need to like pull a 20-hour work shift right now. They're like, oh, you're narcoleptic? Okay, just like sleep more. It's fine.
Yeah.
You don't need pharmaceutical interventions.
No,
So
just sleep in the middle of the day. People do that all the time. I found it was amazing for focus and concentration. I didn't take it not to sleep, but interesting. I was also going to ask, your wife, is her name Therese? Therese? How do I pronounce that? Therese. Therese. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
See, her name no one knows how to spell. Because it's like Therese without an H and with an E at the end. Okay, her middle name. And then she decided, well, we were talking about, right? Like my passport name isn't Jacob. My passport name is like more foreign. And I've decided Jacob to make it easier for Americans in part because I'm weird enough anyway. And I guess my wife in middle school was like, I'm too weird for Stephanie. There's too many Stephanies that like I clearly don't belong in like the group of all the Stephanies here. And so she decided in middle school to go by Therese.
It's a good name.
Yeah, but then she was kind of too shy and introverted to tell anyone about it. So she only like actually started introducing herself as Therese like a few years later. She was in a new environment. But there was a single person who knew her before because she thought it'd be like too awkward.
She was Therese
Tell
internally
someone,
for a
like,
long time.
Hey, can you call me a different name now?
She had time to build it up, though, in her head. So she responded to it immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she was ready to respond. She just really she's like, okay, I'm Therese. But then the thought of like going to other people and asking them stuff and like maybe having some social awkwardness.
Yeah, I'm going to change my name now. That's hard. That's hard even for an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of some, so I've been talking about dating and relationships and like a lot of kind of my thoughts on relationships. People really focus too much on like similarities, that we watch the same shows, have the same politics, whatever. No, when you look actually a relationship, like past the initial dating phase, you really care about how you complement each other's weaknesses. And this includes like things you didn't think of. So for example, ability to like handle awkwardness and impose on people when you have to and like not be bashful.
Yeah.
I'm like super great at this and my wife really isn't. So like when we need to like ramp the awkwardness up, like I do it. But then when you need to like diffuse a situation with grace and like make everybody, feel nice and cozy, like she's much better at it than me. And that really works, right? If I was like, oh no, I need to like find another very like loud extrovert who's like willing to handle awkwardness. I would have like a very awkward life with probably fewer friends, but this is the sort of stuff like, oh, this actually really works in a relationship where we are really good at complementary things.
I think I think I'm very happily married, and I think that I realized after I was in a relationship that one of the most important things is finding somebody who has flaws that are compatible with me. Like my husband doesn't care about how messy things get, and so our house gets messy. And like I do more vacuuming, I do more maybe overall cleaning, but like I just don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me. Whereas like somebody else who is a super neat freak just wouldn't be able to tolerate his level of mess. And then it's a trade-off too. Like he's messy, but also he has like no disgust sensitivity. And so he can clean up the dog shit and it doesn't matter to
Yeah.
him. Or like when a sewer pipe breaks, he fixes it. Oh, and he also fixes things, which is amazing. But like, so
Who
that there's
catches
like
the
this,
deadly spiders in Australia that kill everyone with a single glance?
uh,
I've heard this dangerous fauna.
three of our housemates have tried and they've all perished, unfortunately.
Okay. So it's not
Yeah,
about
we tried
disgust
it. We can,
sensitivity. It's you need military training
yeah,
to
you can
deal
hold
with
a
the
mirror
strength.
up. You can hold a mirror up and then they look, if they don't look directly at you, if they look at you
Ah,
through the mirror, it's
the
it's
Perseus
injurious,
tactic,
but you
right?
don't, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't die immediately, which is nice. So we do that sometimes, but we have to call the military, and unfortunately it's we've had to do it
Is the
twice in the
military
last.
trained up since the emus?
Yeah. Yeah. We've
Yeah, like we need to really step up our
we're
anti-animal
losing
warfare.
we're losing against the cane toads, unfortunately. We still haven't figured out how to beat them. So
I
we're
didn't really hear about
we're
cane toads.
2-0. You don't know about cane toads? Oh
No,
my
it's like, you
god.
think you know about all the horrible Australian animals, and you actually talk to an Australian.
So
And
cane
they're like,
toads are
oh yeah,
actually
no. Like,
I don't know.
we had those animals that were killed by the snakes, who were killed by the spider, who were eaten by the dingoes, but now the cane toads.
The cane toads defeat everyone. So the cane toads are originally, I think, Brazilian or something, and they
Okay.
were brought over in like I don't know the 1700s, 1800s. And so what happened was they had a lot of cane beetles up in Queensland. The cane beetles were eating, I think, the sugar crops. And so they got a cane beetle and they got a cane toad and they put them both on a table and the cane toad ate the cane beetle. So they were like sick, perfect. All right, this is going to eat all the cane beetles. We're all good. No problem. Let's just release him
They're like,
up
the
in
name is a
like
hint.
Queensland.
Okay.
But the cane toads are fat shits and they can't
Okay.
get up to a sugar crop. It's way too high. So they do absolutely nothing for the sugar crop. And also, they're incredibly poisonous. Anything that eats them dies immediately. And their eggs are poisonous and they just keep breeding. And they're the dumbest fucking animals in the entire world. Okay. So they just sit on the roads and they don't move and then they just
Yeah.
get hit by cars. Or people go and like take golf clubs and then just hit them with golf clubs. Not that you should do that, obviously, but like that's what happens. And they don't try
Yeah.
to leave, and they're just like they look like a cow shit. They're like they're like the size of a cow turd.
Sure,
And
because like every animal in Brazil is like evolved to like, see something that looks like a cow shit and like run the fuck away in the other direction because they know it's poisonous. And in
know.
Australia, it's like,
yeah,
yeah.
a lot of venomous things. I don't know how many poisonous things we have. I'm sure we have a lot of
Yeah.
poisonous things. But and then they just breed. They just keep breeding, and now they're coming south. And then, like every year, they come closer, and they're evolving longer legs to get down south faster.
Yeah.
And up in Queensland, they're everywhere. They're like you can't walk out of your house without seeing them. It's incredible. And so yeah, they're just. But our magpies are pretty smart. People
Okay.
have trained the magpies to flip them over and eat the stomach because that's not poisonous.
Okay.
And so magpies have been teaching each other to do that, flip them over, eat the stomach. So that's, I think, and like, yeah, I mean, you occasionally hear of some animal that's developed an immunity or something, but we just haven't figured out a way to kill them pretty much. I think we're working on it maybe, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So it's 2-0 for emus and cane toads, but we're getting there.
Yeah, no, you need allies. I think magpies are cool. You should
Sorry?
yeah, if you could like bribe the magpies with some shiny beads
Yeah.
and
yeah,
train them
exactly.
to be your
Yeah.
army.
Yep. And bread. We used to have, I think, 48 different species of megafauna before, like years before, like thousands of years ago. If you know what wombats are, they were like giant wombats and giant kangaroos just roaming the earth. But unfortunately, none of those. They could have helped us out, but we won the war against those ones a long time ago.
Okay.
So-
Well, you're gonna evolve giant toads.
Yeah, we are. They're getting bigger every year. They're getting bigger. Yeah, maybe we can put weapons on them. They can help us in war.
Well, yeah, I think recently was the 5-year anniversary of the famous tweet about feral hogs. There was
What
some
was it?
discussion about like why you need like automatic stocks and rifles in the US. And some guy, I think from like Texas, was like, well, what am I supposed to do when like 30 to 50 feral hogs run in my backyard where my kids play? People were like, are you like watching a movie? Like that's not a thing that happens. And then people immediately posted like 1,000 videos from Texas. Just like giant herds of like big angry boars,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
roaming everywhere, sprinting at 50 miles an hour along cars on the highway, like running everywhere. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why like America has fewer dangerous wildlife. Is the Second Amendment.
Yeah, that's probably why. God bless America.
It's not even like people like do that much hunting, but like animals sense, there's an armed population. They better like not get to not get any ideas. Because like if those toads were in the U.S., there would be like a national sport by now.
Yeah.
Like how many toads can you shoot with AR-15? People would be like hunting clubs for toads.
That's so true. Oh my God. They wouldn't be using golf clubs on them. It would just be, there would be videos. Have you seen those iguana videos? There's iguanas in Florida and they just have videos of guys with like sniper rifles just zooming in on them and then just shooting them. And there's just tons of those. It would be exactly like that.
Yeah.
We should just hire Americans to come over and shoot them. Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Okay, and then
Make
how are you going to deal
TikToks.
with that species? Florida man.
Ooh.
Florida man is the apex predator of all weird animals. Florida man is unstoppable.
You lure them in. You lure them in with cheap tattoo parlors, like
Yeah,
a
but you're gonna have,
2-for-1
like,
sale
news
on
in Australia,
tattoos.
like Florida man, evolving like tanner skin and moving further south.
Bud Light sales are driving him forward. Don't put your Bud Light on sale, or you will attract Florida men. They are a feral species.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's not good. Not good either. All right. I want to know, Jacob Falkovich, about your dilemma between Sarah and Therese.
Okay. It's kind of funny that that's a story that I'm probably most known for, and looking in retrospect. So this all happened basically like exactly 10 years ago, 9 years ago. I'm like, it's kind of funny. So, I came to New York with this girl I've been dating for a few years, but we were long distance and we finally moved together. She broke up with me 2 weeks after signing the lease, and now like
What?
single for. Yeah, we
Was
like
she
signed.
always terrible with timing? Was this a chronic thing?
No, she's like a generally responsible person. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she like actually broke up with me was very like a responsible and agentic thing to do. It was very good because somebody had to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we stayed living in the same apartment for another year and a half after we broke up because we were like much better roommates than we were, black partners. So I was like single and nothing okay Cupid for the first time, and just like started going on a lot of dates, having fun, and uh, just kind of like really realized like okay, no, I can adjust my profile to like attract more compatible people, and like really treated it. Okay, this is like a skill I'm gonna get better at. How do I basically communicate and signal? Like I was having fun on dates with everyone, but I was like, okay, I feel like I'm not really selecting for someone I can actually like live with and marry. So the quality of my dates started going like way up after a while, and at the end of a year, I met this girl Sarah that I was like immediately was like, okay, this is great. We could get along. We have like so much in common. We have such great chemistry. This is awesome. And then 3 dates later, I also met Therese. So after I went on like about 3 dates with each one of them over the course of like 2-3 weeks, I was like, okay, wait, like either one of them like might be my wife. This is like a serious thing here. I kind of need to decide. And so the advice like, okay, like follow your heart, trust your gut, flip a coin and see what you hope it lands. Now, this is all nonsense. Like if you can't decide, you can decide, right? And especially in some sense, this is like such a multi-dimensional problem. Like your brain can like only focus on like one thing at a time, right? You remember like this funny thing she said, this like thing that like you really liked. But then also like a couple of years before that, I was discovered online rationality, and a bunch of nerds coming out with like really nerdy techniques to figure out things. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take what I want in like think what I want in relationship, actually like spell it all out. Make sure like I have every base covered, like everything I care about, including maybe things that are kind of embarrassing to admit to myself. Like, oh, they want a hot girlfriend was like just for me, or also because like I look cooler if I show up somewhere with like a girlfriend who's hotter. And, and I even added stuff to the spreadsheet like, well, if she's like rich, it's better than if she's not rich.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna add like it's always because like I dated a really rich girlfriend and I was like really young and broke and it was great. Such an amazing experience. I think
Everyone should do it.
it's been like 20 years. I still have like some clothes that she bought me. Because she said, Jacob, you can dress like this when you're around me. Here's some like actual clothes that cost more than 20 shekels. Um, so yeah, I like thought, okay, I have like 25 things I want in a relationship and gave each one of them a weight. And then I tried to like score, what's my best guess at how like compatible I am with each one of them and all of those. And I was sure, despite all this convoluted process, they all come up to the exact same score. And in part, I was like, doing this just to clarify it for myself. Like actually kind of go through the exercise of thinking what I care about. Is there something, it's going to be really important in a long-term relationship that isn't really salient when you just start dating someone? But if I actually, spreadsheet to my head, had to put a number on it, I would come up with something, be like, oh, okay, I think she's like more serious about having kids than her, which is maybe something that comes up early. And yeah, Therese came out really ahead, and she came out really ahead because I actually had like a little error in the spreadsheet, and then when I fixed it later, it turned out she was just slightly ahead. But I only discovered that much later when I was already living with Therese. Uh, but
Rationality doesn't allow us to comprehend the unconscious and the mistakes that we make sometimes, I think.
yeah, I kind of did the spreadsheet, thought about it, met with Sarah to break up with her, and now Therese and I have 2 kids.
Amazing.
And it's fine. So for me, this kind of spreadsheet was an exercise in just like, okay, like clarifying to myself what I want in relationships.
So what was on the
Which-
spreadsheet?
So kind of broke into one kind of point of this exercise is that you like write some things that you care about, and then you try to think, okay, if I actually had all of this, but nothing else, would I be like perfectly happy? Then you realize, okay, there may be like some things, you didn't want to admit. So yeah, I don't know, like that's pretty predictable. I guess like the main category was okay, just our interaction together. So it was someone could like talk at my level about the subjects I care about, like intellectual subjects, and has like stuff to teach me. I was thinking about humor, and I was like, okay, there's just like 2 components. It's like someone who like really gets my humor, and also someone who cracks me up.
Were these things differently weighted?
Well, I don't know. Well, like I don't know. In the spreadsheet, like I had them in the same place.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I know stuff like kind of career goals compatible with mine, the cities we want to live in. How well should I get along with my friends, how good sex might be. I gave a pretty low weight to like being open to polyamory because at the time that was kind of like a funny thing. Like I like, really became polyamorous like 4 years into my marriage. Whereas before I was like, I kind of tried. It seems like interesting. I might be able to do it. Now, actually, when I'm like writing about this, I think there was a really important thing about Therese that was actually the most important, and that even like wasn't on the spreadsheet because I couldn't didn't really figure it out at the time. But like one thing I would have put on the spreadsheet is something like has immunity to social reality. And what I mean by that is if there's a really important decision to be made or something happens, someone who defaults to thinking, okay, what is the right thing to do here? As opposed to what is the normal thing to do here. In Paris, kind of dating like really lovely, but like, someone kind of randomly chosen women in New York, that was like an underlying point of friction. Was that I'm just not like very respectable. And I can like kind of fake it, but then like I would actually just never feel safe with someone whose default mode is thinking, okay, what is normal? What do people do here? As opposed to what's right. Like my favorite example of this is I told my coworker, she's just like a random day at work. She's like, "Hey, you want to get some coffee?" I'm like, "No, I ate some beans this morning." She's like, "What do you mean?" Like, I was kind of in a rush to get out of the house. I didn't have time to like make myself a cappuccino, so I just grabbed some beans and ate them. But like, I got my caffeine. She's like, "That's crazy." I'm like, "No, look, you eat chocolate covered beans. That's fine. They taste okay. You get the caffeine." And she's like, "But that's not how they're used." I'm like, "Okay, this is the condition. Like, how they're used is actually a fact about people, not a fact about beans, right? Like the beans have their taste, they have their caffeine content, they have their texture, and then separately there's like people and their habits."
Hmm.
And she couldn't make that separation. Like
Yeah.
clearly she just like
Interesting.
couldn't. And just kept repeating that like, "That's not normal, why would you do that?" I'm like, "Well, to get caffeine and get out of the house." She's like, "But that's not how it's done." No. Okay, but it's like it's me and the beans. There's no one else there. It's like just us.
Yep.
No one else is like watching me. And yeah. So it's like I don't know. Trish is very good at this. And yeah, I think it's kind of, I don't know, probably just a factor of how people's like personality and maybe how they grew up. I think this sort of thing is probably very hard to change
Hmm.
about people. Like if someone's really like living in social reality and comfortable there, it's probably a bad idea for them to try to be like an outsider who can step out from like what is normal and what is but then like for me I like didn't quite realize that that's how my life had to be.
It's interesting. I've been listening to stuff about Rene Girard, and
Yeah.
he had this idea of mimetics, which is I'm sure is very well known. And I don't know how much the rationality community talks about
Not
it, but
enough. I'm
not
trying to
enough.
bring mimetics to the rats.
All right, yeah, let's go. I've been listening to Jonathan By's lectures, and it's interesting. They're very well done. Jonathan B, I think it is. So he talks about how we've kind of evolved to just be very mimetic creatures. Like the idea of prestige is like the word prestige is coded with like, okay, it's valuable, but it is valuable because so many people want it. So it has this inherent like almost valuelessness if you're only counting like what it's actually delivering you if you strip away so like a Rolex watch, for instance, is just a fucking watch, right? But it has prestige. So
Yeah.
it's more, it adds all this value.
Or a tall
So
boyfriend.
like, yeah, a tall boyfriend, yeah, right. Oh my God.
This is the thing. This is like
I
my
say
go-to
this
example
so
of
much
talking
to
about
women. I
mimetic
say this
desire.
so much to women. I say, if you
But
look,
people get so mad.
if
They're
I
like,
say this to women all the time. I say, if you go for a guy who's like a little short or bald or something, you can get yourself a deal. Like there's so
Yeah.
many good guys available if you just like lower your height requirement a little bit. It's amazing.
yeah, that's it, right? Like wearing a watch that people think is like really cool watch, or having a boyfriend that like other women think is high status. Like that's great. The problem with mimetic desire is it kind of blinds you. Like you're not
How's it
actually
blind
able.
you?
Well, blinding you, like you're not actually able to make the trade-offs. You don't actually see the thing, right? Like all else being equal, like probably a taller boyfriend is like, I don't know, better. It's like slightly more, I don't know, physically adept. You can reach stuff from a shelf. Like other women respecting you a bit more or being a bit more envious could go either way. Like it's not bad in itself. Like the reason I think it's like height for men, or maybe like youth for women, is just like it's the most visible good trait as opposed to like the most good trait. Like you immediately can tell how tall someone's boyfriend is. Like the moment you see them, you don't know how like if he's a really great emotional listener, or like really makes her feel heard and taken care of, right? Like that's something you need to know them for years to even have a glimpse. So that kind of becomes the locus of mimetic desire. It's like it's immediately visible. You can judge everyone on it right away. But yeah, like if you're not aware that what's happening is it's visible, so you see everybody else chasing it, and so you kind of become infected with this desire, then you're not even aware that like, okay, this is just one thing. I should decide how I trade it off against like other things I care about.
I'm interested in that because, I mean, surely you have to take evolutionary psychology into account there, especially with youth. Like, it's just men are evolved to have sex with women, and reproduction is the prime directive. And if she's youthful, then she can have more babies. Like, how do you factor that in?
Okay, like if you're a guy, you're looking for, okay, why do I care about the girl being young? So, like if you can actually like, intellectualize it and have a bit of insight, you realize, okay, there's like three different things. There's you know, we will have like more and like, 0.5% healthier kids because she's like a bit younger or start earlier. But then, okay, like it's not just youth, right? Like you want to like check how healthy like her parents are and stuff. There's like a lot of the same for like height. It's like, oh, you want like a guy who's physically capable, but like you don't check guys, squat, like how much they squat or can they juggle, which are like also like quite useful indicators of
I
physical
don't know. I
ability.
mean, you don't know. I wouldn't say that quite. Like, I think there are proxies for that. Like, you don't see how much he squats, but if he has giant leg muscles, that's probably more attractive.
Yeah, the margin, but like people don't put their squat on their dating profile, right? We just decided there's just like one number
No,
that's
but he
going to
shows his
spend
abs
in.
on his dating profile, which is, I mean, it. And his, if he has like great legs, he'll show his legs on his dating profile.
Yeah,
Like
no.
it's,
Yeah, people show, they like had their competence, but it's like a lot of like things that are kind of important, right? You have like your entire body to do stuff like that, and it kind of all collapses to like, do you have like abs and big forearms and height? But again, so going back to you, it's like, okay, so I'm like on the margin of like, how many kids you have, but like I don't know how many people really like care about, okay, I like actually need a lot of kids and so I like really need to like optimize for like marrying someone who's not older than a certain age. Like how many guys who are in their 20s or are like, oh no, I need like 6 kids, and like 6 kids you really need to start young. And then the second one is, how other people see you. Yeah, it's like older than you. Some people think it's weird. If she's like a lot younger, like some people think it's weird, but maybe some guys will think, you're a Chad. And then there's and some part of it is like, okay, but like in your gut, you just like, maybe like find younger women attractive. Which I think like the strength of it is quite different for different men. And yeah, like it's evolved, it's just gonna be in you. But if you have insight into this, you can say, okay, those are the things I care about. Kinda, I get like the sense of like the taste of caring about them, like how important it is to me. And maybe I just like want 2 kids. And this like fertility thing, I should discount it. And I do think like if you have insight into those things, you can like, get more self-aware, kind of focus on just looking at your desires closely and seeing what's there, whether you put them on a dumb spreadsheet or not. It does like slowly change you. Like over time, you find yourself like caring less about things, more about others. I think this is especially important when you just meet someone for dating because like when you're in a relationship with someone, like most of your relationships kind of gonna cover like all the ages. Like whether you marry someone when she's 20 or she's 30, you're gonna be together for like all of her 30s, all of her 40s, all of her 50s. Like it's so uh you don't wanna get like too taken over like by what's happening like just now, how she looks like this year. Or how much did they make this year or something. You wanna look at things that are gonna matter in the long term.
Yeah, you're kind of trying to separate. I mean, it seems like, and Rationality does this really well a lot of the time, is separate kind of the biological underpinnings from
Yeah.
reality. Like, I like how you said that you separated attractiveness into 3 distinct categories. I'm not sure if you said that in this interview, but in
Yeah.
your article you did. Like, there was attractiveness to look at, attractiveness, and then there was a separate attractiveness of like,
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
like how good the sex is, and then like
Yeah.
okay, how I mean like conventionally attractive, that's more about like how other people perceive me being with someone.
yeah, and it raises your status if in certain circles, and I'm sure like it's important to be honest about why you want certain things.
Yeah.
So what else was there that you were a little bit more shy to write down, or that maybe you didn't even realize about yourself?
Well, I don't know, like being rich and like not being in debt. I
Yeah.
think it's maybe at the time, I was I guess 27 when I put this together. And if a lot of guys would have had it there, or kind of like specifically talking about status and how they're perceived, it's kind of like a big reason why like a big component of wanting that is never ever talking about it and ideally hiding it from yourself. Yeah, no, like at the time, like actually trying to think hard about, okay, will she be a smart and dedicated mom? Like not just like really trying to tell from just like snippets of conversation the first 2 3 dates whether someone has like actually thought about this. Like here's how like I'm gonna raise kids. I'm like looking forward to it. Like, oh yeah, it would be nice to like have kids one day. Okay, like, I wasn't gonna feel like time pressure or something, but I did kind of think, oh, this is not salient at all when you're just like on a third date with someone you have a huge crush on. It's all those emotions. But like, actually, for the rest of my life, this like super matters. This was like actually the highest scoring category. And the point of it was like hard to actually like guess how You know, like I actually had like a very poor idea of how good a mom Therese would be. Uh, and I kind of just got lucky and she turned out to be like much better than I thought. Um,
Ah,
but
I think it
yeah,
changes a person too. I think it's hard to predict how
yeah.
good of a parent they'll be.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
it's interesting.
that's something that's
Yeah.
that's something that's hard to predict. You should be like, well, hard to predict them, so I'm not gonna give it like too much weight.
Mm.
I'm not gonna like obsess over like this one thing she said, but should be aware of it. And also, it's a bit useful because like once you go through this exercise, then you start noticing things. Like, stuff happens. You're like, oh, yeah, this is actually like a really good, really positive like sign for this thing that like I forgot to care about, but I actually like do. Or, oh no, this may be a warning thing. Like we better discuss this.
Mm.
Yeah. Then again, at the end, like the spreadsheet became kind of famous. There's a journalist who wrote about it. There was a funny story. She was like writing a story about polyamory and was talking to some of my friends who are more famous. They're professors, and I think they just didn't want to like deal with the journal article. And so they were like, I should talk to this guy Jacob. And then like they just sent her a link to my blog, journalist, and she read the thing about the spreadsheet, and it became an Economist article in like the Economist magazine.
Oh, nice.
And it's kind of fun. It's like you always like get famous for the things that are kind of random.
Mm.
And so for me, it's like a post on COVID that like fired off in 2 hours, which just like happened to be read by the guy who read the British government. And then, and in the post itself, like it have changed his mind about lockdowns. Like, was that even a good thing? And then this thing about spreadsheets, I'm like, I think most people missed the point. And also when I was making the spreadsheets, I actually missed the point. Like I actually don't think you can fully intellectualize everything you need. I think a big part of like figuring out what you actually want requires like much more woo stuff that I think I would have like stomached at the time when I was more of a
Yeah.
hardcore rationalist. It's stuff like I need to like somehow like peer into your shadow, see what summons jouissance and things like various other like French words that send most like rationalists running for the hills. Like, I don't know if you can make a like a rationalist technique out of trying to figure out like what are your shadow desires that you're ashamed to admit even to a spreadsheet.
Mm.
But that's actually kind of the practice that I think might be more. I have a friend that I kind of like contribute for the book of which she just mentioned something at the party. She was married early and it like didn't work well. It was she said, the guy she married was like great on paper, but then like in the relationship, everything kind of sucked. And she's like, okay, we need to do something else. And what she did was she just tried to get into a lot of relationships with people and know people, especially people who just like summon strong emotions in her. Even if she couldn't tell if it was good or bad.
Oh, interesting.
Just like unusual people where she like felt something like special was happening that were like exhilarating in some way. And so she just like over a few years really like developed a taste, almost like hearing notes of kind of like the flavor of her connection to people, or like the way the energy moves between them that she couldn't even put into words, but she like really tried to like pay attention to it. And be like, okay, I recognize this. This is something. And then she met a guy who like immediately hit like all of those at once.
Mhm.
And she's like, okay, this is the one for me. And
That
like,
makes total sense.
yeah, they got
Uh,
married recently,
oh, beautiful.
and so
There's something to be said. So like I don't know, I set friends up. I like to talk a lot about relationships and helping people find, their partner. And there's this really indefinable quality of intuition. Like I found my husband based on intuition. Like it was just I went on a lot of dates for a few years, and they were mostly like almost exclusively first and second dates. And there was this guy who was really good on paper right before I met my husband, actually. And I just, good on paper, nice guy. It just, like, there was something in me that said it just wasn't right. And so I broke it up with him. I broke it off with him. And then right after I met my husband, I trust my intuition a lot. And I think I've honed it a lot over the years. And someone who doesn't have a good intuition, it's like, I have no idea how how you're supposed to find a person
okay, but,
because
like, why did you trust
yeah,
your intuition? Like, I think it's a trained skill. Like, part of the training is not just to
training.
train
Yeah,
it,
for sure.
and you train with like really paying attention. Okay, this thing that like oh, you turned out to be an asshole after the second date. Were there signs? Oh, I actually felt a hint of this in the first date. And then when you look focus on it and think of your intuition also as a skill as opposed to just something random that happens, like a fortune cookie that you just open and it tells you like weird messages, then you actually trust it more.
Yeah.
I think part, when I was like younger and more just like very like analytical intellectualizing is, well, I had intuitions, but I didn't trust them. And I didn't have like a very strong reason to trust them. I didn't have a lot of experience of having gut reads people or situations that I followed on that turned out to be good. Like it's not magic. It's like your brain doing stuff. You do it more with more attention, you get better.
Yeah, I think I've heard it described as like a quiet voice, and sometimes for me, it's like, oh, this person reminds me of this other person in this very specific situation, and that could be a positive or negative thing. But like, especially with negative things, like the key is just to listen to it, like, and also listen to it even when social cues tell you not to listen to it, or it's like rude to listen to it, or whatever it is. Just like, especially when it's a red flag and a person seems dangerous or toxic in some way, I just like cut them off, and I can be pretty rude sometimes, but like just when I get a little flash, I just trust it. But yeah.
I think there's a funny failure mode that I've seen the other way, where people like want to be really intuitive because they think it's cool, and so they like maybe get something, or maybe just like think they get something, sort of like intuition, and then like really follow on it way too strongly, and also like tell everybody else that that's what they're doing because they
Yeah.
just kind of want to be known as the person who trusts their gut and has deep intuition. And I know like a couple of women who are a bit like that to the point where it's like almost comical. I'm like, okay, it's I just like really need you to know that they like had this read in the situation where, like was probably actually like nothing there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a friend who actually like it's kind of interesting. She trains it. For example, she has a big Facebook group with a lot of her friends, and once in a while she would post things like, hey, I met this person, interacted with them for 20 minutes, and I got the vibe of them that is like this or that. Can people confirm or deny? Like, what's your read? Because she's like, I want to like learn and train.
But
She's
wait,
like,
they've never met this person though, right?
no, it's like someone in the community.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Someone's like, she's like, she has a lot of friends. She's pretty well known. So like, like some people would chime in and say like, oh no, I've known this person for a year and they're cool. Or like, oh no, I have the same thing. Or like, oh, there's actually a story about them.
Mm.
So you're like deliberately training her. It's funny. It's like someone who does like, I think she doesn't think of herself as being very intuitive. She thinks of herself as being slightly autistic, but then this is like deliberate practice of your intuition, like actually putting it out there without shame. Be like, okay, am I wrong here? Like,
Yeah.
grade my intuition. Tell me what you all
Interesting.
think. Yeah, I think, and it's like kind of cool to be in a community where people do things like that. That's one of the things I really like the most about like teapot rats, this sort of thing. Like people just do
Yeah.
this. Nobody thinks this is an insane thing to do.
Teapot is on Twitter, by the way, for anyone who's wondering.
Yeah.
It's a community on Twitter. Rats are rationalists. Yeah, it's interesting because they have this. I guess they're kind of, a lot of them are post-rationalists, I guess you could say, but they have this very objective way of measuring things. Like Teapot is kind of like rationalists, like very very logical thinkers who have suddenly discovered like emotions and sensations in their body and intuition and things like that. And so they're oftentimes, just like you said, she's trying to calibrate intuition in a very in almost a scientific way.
Yeah.
Not quite, but yeah, very close. As close as you can
Well, I
get.
think that's kind of what ideally you want to be as a post rat. It's gonna take your training of like there are magical things, but there's no magic. Everything is something your brain does, but also that like a lot of what your brain does is kind of opaque to you.
Hmm.
You don't have like immediate access to everything that's happening, and you should be curious about it. I think it's a quite natural people who like go into rationality, and rationality is very like much more explicit about basically using kind of what like the academic literature calls your system tool, your like explicit step-by-step verbal reason, the sort of thing you could like spell out and calculate or like write out on a page. Kind of using that to power through a lot of things that normally you would just like do with your gut or your intuition or your quick reads.
Like what?
And Well, I mean, conditional examples in the literature are all when like people like intuitively, they make like bad bets or they like miscalculate some number because of like some anchoring or loss aversion. And then that's like the easiest example because there, when you like actually like go through the math, it's basically the number you got is like actually correct. Right? Like, would you choose this bet of like 5% chance of getting like this thing or this other bet? And then okay, you start like expanding it a bit more. Right. I don't know, you might think of something like the halo effect. Oh, you like learn that people like intuitively, if someone's like hot, they think they're also like a better person. And then you can, try to like, okay, go through like some people that are hot and try to like think of good and bad things they've done. But you put probabilities on a lot of things, you make a lot of bets and events happening. It's kind of part of rationality practice. And a lot of people, you know, it's almost like a dojo on like a remote mountain in China. People learn some special martial arts technique. You're not actually going to live your entire life by doing kung fu, but it's like you go there, you learn the thing, and then usually you're like, okay, you kind of like slowly move past it, but then you keep this mindset, right? So something like, trying to calibrate your intuition by asking people to like grade your reads on people is a very rationalist approach. But then people like realize, okay, like your intuition, kind of like social wisdom, you know, stuff that are kind of accessible to you, shadows and kinks and whatever, all kind of like mystical traditions. There's like stuff in them, come in with the mindset to them. I think one thing that happened on like when the community gets bigger, and for example, like it is on Twitter, where there's like no gatekeeping at all, everyone can join, is you have those people who like bring the rationalist norms, but just a curiosity about how people are. So they get more into meditation or various like traditions and practices. They meet people who like never gone through rationalist training. They're just like straight into astrology. And, like, so like post rat could mean someone who's like a rat who's now interested in post stuff, and someone who's like very much an anti-rat who's like, oh cool, like somewhat more intelligent than average people who are willing to talk about chakras with me. This is
Yep.
great.
Yep.
And
Absolutely. I want to change the subject a bit because I just read the early version of your book that's not out yet, very special, and it just had so many good little pieces of advice in it. So I want to ask you a couple things. So actually, kind of on the topic of rat, can you tell me about micromarriages and what they are?
yeah, micromarriages, I think it was coined by Chris Ola. Some kid in public want to give attribution. He's an AI researcher, but then Scott Alexander popularized it. So I think it comes from this concept called micromorts, and a micromort is just a 1 in a million chance of dying. And then you kind of think of like budgeting risk for your entire life. You can think of it this way: like, okay, let's say I, pick up smoking but sell my motorcycle for an SUV. Is that like good or bad? And then you can actually like do the math. You're like, oh, people who smoke, like this is the chance of dying if you like smoke like an extra 100 packs. But then like in a motorcycle, you have like this much chance of dying for every 100 miles driven. So given how much you drive, you accumulate those little chances of right. It's like kind of hard to not die, but in some sense, like if you like accumulate micromorts slower and make good trade-offs, then you kind of like lower your risk. And like meeting someone you're gonna marry or like have a serious relationship with is in many ways also like a stochastic process. It's not deterministic. Okay, you go this, it's not like school exam where okay, you study, you get the thing, you get the grade. Like you set up yourself for it, and then you kind of like wait to get lucky. But you can actually like accumulate luck at like very different rates. So you can think of everything you do as like accumulating, small chances at the marriage, right? You're going to a party. Okay, well, how many people are going to be there that you don't know? Like an average, how compatible those people are. Oh, this party is this friend. He actually like, knows a lot of like interesting people. Like everyone I've met through him, I liked, and I expect there to be 4 people of the sex I'm attracted to that I haven't met before, and like an average 2 of them would be single, and I'm feeling like kind of hyped today, so I'm gonna like talk to them. It's like, all right, well, like if I met 100 people like that, would I marry one of them? Okay, probably. Okay, so if I get to meet 2 of them and talk to them, that's like 20,000 micro marriages. I think it also like really helps with motivation. A lot of people, when they start dating and kind of been doing it for a while, and they're like, I don't know, I've had some good dates, some bad dates, I'm not sure what's happening. Like, thinking of this in terms of like, you're kind of like accumulating luck.
Mm.
Um, then, that's gonna help you, like, motivates you
Yeah.
to keep going out there, as opposed to saying like, well, I don't know, I went to 5 parties and nothing happened, so I'm gonna like stay home today
Mm.
and like not go out. Well, if you're not going out, you're getting 0 micro marriages. And if you're going to that party, you're going to get 20,000. And 20,000 is
Yeah.
not guaranteeing you a spouse, but over a year, if you keep doing that every week, there's actually like a very good chance
Good
you'll
chance.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go to 50 parties, statistically, you are likely to have a marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I know a really successful girl who, or a woman, she's my age, I'm 30. Really, a doctor, really good job. And when I was talking to her, she had been on like one date that year and she wanted a partner. And it was a difficult situation because I don't know how much you agree with this, but it seems like women tend to date across and up in terms of intelligence and like maybe status or career success or some proxy for intelligence. And if you're a 140 IQ woman, like it's hard to find a 140 IQ man. I mean, that's significantly less than 1 in 100, right? And then someone who gets along with you and agrees with you and you can
Yeah.
marry.
Yeah, I think
It's statistically hard to
that's
find.
not,
Go on.
well, for intelligence, I don't really know. I think Scott did a review of some literature and found that like women marry up in income and men marry up in education a little bit.
Hmm.
So like, to much for like, a guy, well, I guess like we're kind of the classic example, right? Like I have an MBA, which is kind of like a degree for retarded people a little bit. But it's like it
You
gets you
said it,
paid.
not me. It
Yeah,
gets
no,
you
but
paid.
like
Awesome.
no, like I'm like a math guy, but then like, I had the chance to come to the US for an MBA. Right.
Right.
So my wife's a PhD and I'm an MBA, but like I made a lot more money
Yeah.
because like I worked in finance. So that's actually a classical thing.
But I don't think men are selecting for upwards in intelligence. It's just that more women happen to have better, like higher education. I would imagine.
Yeah, no,
I don't know a lot of guys who are like, oh, I want to marry a girl who has a master's degree. In fact, I've never heard a guy say that.
yeah, and I think this is more observable. I think guys don't like look for your degree. I mean, women do put their university on their like Hinge profiles, or that's I think mostly about like class signaling.
Yeah,
That's a kind of
class is a
maybe
big
the
thing.
trade-offs you do. For the girl being 140 IQ, it should make dating much easier, not harder. Like it's insane to think that it's harder because the supply and demand, right? She's like looking for really smart guys. Like unless they all want like mid-wit women, like what does it matter?
I don't think that's true. I
Like
think
there's only
that
100 girls like
smart
her.
guys. I think that smart guys, a guy who's 145 IQ, is probably happy with 130 IQ, maybe down to 120 IQ, and he probably wants a woman he probably has other qualifications. He's not like, I need to date a girl who's
I
within
think
5 points of my IQ range, whereas she probably only wants to date up or across.
See, I think this is a stereotype that's just like not borne out. I think people
Yeah.
are really do like very strong assortative mating, and like almost everyone I think ends up marrying someone close to them. Well, so going back to micromarriages, right? Like, so what does it mean if you're like very smart and you want a very smart guy? If you go to like a bar on a Friday night and some like guys flirt with you, it's kind of very loud at the bar. They just flirt with you because like your tits are nice. You're not accumulating a lot of micromarriages actually.
Hmm.
If you go to
You
like,
are, but you're also accumulating micro divorces.
yeah, no, but in fact, like the chance of you, right? Like it's not just about like how many guys you talk to, but like what sort.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you go to some like speaker series where like people gather to know, like book clubs or academic clubs or whatever, like at the very least, like everybody who's like you just want to be in the room where everybody who like walks into the room is in part selected.
Yep.
For like being the thing that you want, which is you can do on dating apps. Like dating apps are like so low context. Again, so she maybe like very cares about intelligence, but almost everyone has something they kind of care about a lot.
Hmm.
Cultural things or like particular interests or particular personality types. And there's probably some, in a big enough town, there's some like groups and social circles that already select for that or like strongly select for that. So she should just be going to social events where smart people go to, right? People go to some like lecture series to like hear a professor talk about their book on whatever topic. I would advise, pick some topics where it's going to be like 60% guys in the audience. And then it's like easy for you. Like the fact there's like a few guys like that, but there's like a few women like that, right? Like most of the women in town aren't going to that like lecture hall to hear the guy talk about his books. Like, what do you care? How many like other people are doing their own thing?
Mm.
Like,
Is there a
you
reason
know,
why you chose 60% guys? Like not 80 or something?
yeah, I think really skewed gender ratios, they kind of make it like too awkward and hard for everyone. I think 80-20 is like the only guys who would like dare flirt with a woman at an 80-20 in some sense. Kind of like really selected for like being super bold and sexually aggressive and maybe like a bit like sociopathic, not in like being bad, but like it like very strongly selects for something you might really care about. Just like a guy like really throwing caution to the wind, be like, I don't care, if this woman already feels pressure because there's so many guys, I'm gonna like, shoot my shot.
Yeah.
Whereas 60-40, you're like in high demand because you're like, in the 40, but guys will still be like, oh, it's like a woman I get along with. I'm gonna talk to her, maybe like invite her out for coffee. I think there was a big in-person teapot gathering that was like 80-20. Yeah, I think it's just the vibes are off. Also, 80-20, if it's the sort of thing where like people like might be flirting, the 80% just get like sad and frustrated. There's kind of this
Okay.
like atmosphere of male frustration in the air is just like not sexy.
You can smell it.
Yeah, like no, 55-45 is great.
Okay. And it's the same for men versus women. So if it's 80% women, you think that is that too much if you're a guy, or what do you think?
I'll have to be honest here. Well, aside from my own house where it's 75-25 because I have two girls. Uh, but when like my wife's mom comes to visit, it's 80-20. But I don't know, I have like more male typical interest in like
Yeah. You're
I'm
not at
very
the local
rarely in
knitting club.
places that are like 45 guys, 55 women is in terms of like social situations I've been in. I haven't been in a 2018 in a very, very long time.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Good to know.
That might be difficult for me because I think in like a 2080 space, 80% women, it's gonna be like a more female norms of like discussion, communication. And I think this is gonna be like hard for me to fit in. So for example, like keep what our Twitter community, I've written about it. It's a lot of like male norms that are always like, independent of like how many women are there. But for example, that it's kind of okay to bluntly disagree with someone.
Yeah.
I think kind of rubs a lot of women the wrong way. Like this is kind of hard for them to fit in, kind of. But I think guys who end up in like maybe 2080 spaces, they might feel like, well, everyone's talking in these coded languages. Everybody's like, putting like so much emphasis on kind of like maintaining social harmony. Like you can't even have like guys with you can't even have a straight conversation with someone. I think, like for me specifically, that would be somewhat difficult.
Yeah. And I imagine there's an element of wanting to play to your strengths.
Yeah, I found even like I had like a party with actually like I think 7 guys and 8 girls, and all the girls said that most of their friends are male friends, and they offer like very different reasons. Like, yeah, I'm like not very comfortable in girl spaces, so in part, kind of like my life is selected for
Yeah. Yeah.
just people who like male norms.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And there's like this whole parallel world to mine of people who like female norms, and I'm like,
Yeah.
sure, those guys like having fun in their like mirror world.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. So switching topics a little bit. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make on a first date?
Just like people make on a first date. I don't know. We have so many mistakes. I think they really come in with they go to a first date they don't really want to be on, or they come in to a date like a judge in the Olympics for gymnastics. It's like I'm here to like train my ego eye and make sure I spot any like reasons to reject someone. Like if you or they're like really trying to impress someone. I think like be yourself and have fun is the sort of like advice. It's like so useless because you can just like press a button and be yourself and have fun. But I actually
Yeah. If
think
you're
that
not
like,
intuitively, naturally good at it, yeah.
but I think the things you can actually do is just like a bit more tricky. Right? Like be yourself. Like be yourself. I think really, I think the way to operationalize it for most people is don't be anyone. Don't try to be a persona. Don't even be, like the normal you, because you're not like in a normal situation. You're in a date.
Mm.
Like just don't try to be anything. And have fun means like just do stuff that seems enjoyable, right? Go on dates to places where you would enjoy dating. You don't like just sitting across from someone like at the bar. Don't do that. Go on a hike. And
Yeah.
so I feel like failure to be yourself and have fun, which is kind of like the dumbest advice. But I just hear from people that go on dates and kind of don't like them, then they stop dating. And I'm like, why?
Like, yeah, that kind of
Well,
stems
it's
back to this
kind of
mimetic
because they
idea of
weren't
like,
themselves.
yeah,
Didn't have fun.
if you go to a bar and you're not used to bars and you don't like them very much, you're kind of doing something because it's mimetically sound, like because other people do it and it's the normal thing to do on a date, but you're
Yeah.
not in your kind of natural environment.
Yeah, that's a part of the problem of selection. It's like, again, like the 140 IQ girl, like, well, you don't care. Like, even if most people like bars, who do you care? Among the people who don't like bars,
Hmm.
like, unless among the people who don't like bars, like, you're in very low demand or something. But I don't know. Assume like about an equal number of like men and women like and don't like bars.
Hmm.
I know. Especially if you're a girl, maybe like more men don't like, because like the men pay for bars. It's like, oh, a hike? Great. I don't have to, there's nothing to pay for
Yeah,
a hike.
don't have to pay for
Let's
anything.
go.
Yeah, yeah, yep, totally free. There was something that you wrote about which I really thought was interesting around sexual attractiveness and marriage satisfaction. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I did. Well, it kind of came out of like a survey I did. I was like doing a research project on whether women like assholes.
Do they?
And I had some like kind of
Do
interesting
we?
artifact. Hmm?
Do we like assholes?
No.
Okay.
Psychopathy is like strictly kind of negative for you in dating. Narcissism is slightly negative, and Machiavellianism, so like being manipulative and lying well, slightly gets you laid more. But all the like effects are like, even though I surveyed like 1,200 people, the effects are like low enough that I wouldn't like have strong opinions on them. In part, it's just that's a common meme, and like the research on it is like beyond atrocious. Like even by the standards of social science, most of which is kind of fake. This is like extremely fake.
Yeah.
Like you see the newspapers report on a study that women like, dark triad, and the study was like somebody wrote some paragraphs that are supposed to like encode for dark triad trades, and then let a bunch of like 19-year-old girls for course credit read the paragraphs and like put some number on like whether they would like them or not. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this has like less than nothing to do with. And then also like, there was no effect, and they had to p hack to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
like a p value. But like this is not. This is
There's
not women.
someone,
This is not
there's
assholes. This
someone
is not
for everyone
attraction.
though. Yeah,
Hmm?
there's someone for everyone though. Like Ted Bundy had crowds of women outside of his prison. I mean,
Oh
there
no,
is
no.
a
Look,
certain woman who loves psychopaths.
no, it's like men who are famous and ambitious and high agency.
Yeah,
Killing
that's
a bunch
true.
of people is like quite an impressive achievement.
Very high agency.
Like,
Society's norms do not encourage that.
okay, here's the thing: women don't like guys who dream of being a serial killer.
No, no.
Because you're just like a guy in your mom's basement talking about killing people. That's a fucking loser. But if you
Yeah.
actually go and do it, like just going out and doing something is like really attractive for a man.
Yeah, that's so true. It's
It's
so
not the
true. Just
psychopathy.
do
It's the psychopathy
something.
plus, agency plus ambition plus the skill required to murder some people. I don't know.
Skill. There is a lot of skill in not getting caught by the police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you need to get caught eventually, so women know where to write you.
There's a right time to get caught. Yeah, Charles Manson,
Yeah.
same. Although he didn't kill people, but yeah, same thing. Charisma is what Manson had. He had charisma. Women love charisma. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, so one thing I just like I just ask people to self-rate how hot they are and how reliable it is. But I mean, I guess it was like useful enough because there was like a very clear signal, especially for women, that like hotter women just have a lot more casual sex and sexual partners, but they're no more likely to actually be in long-term relationships or to like have been in long-term relationships a big part of their adult lives. I think it's kind of like other data showing it. Again, I don't really like kind of relying on data and studies too much, but looking around, I think a lot of things you see is that people who are very hot just date people of equal attractiveness, which means that even if you're like really, really hot, which means they're not actually like gaining any selection benefit than anything else, right? If you think a woman who's a 10, she could be like, well, I can pick a guy who's the smartest, the most ambitious, the kindest, the best listener, the most emotionally stable, the most like loyal and adores me personally. It's like, no, I'm gonna like only date other guys who are 10s and then get like about an equal outcome on like every single other thing that actually contributes. And in part it means that
What a waste.
hot people's relationships aren't like any more stable or happier, which is something you kind of see in the data because like you don't really stay in a relationship with someone just because they're hot. Right?
Yeah.
Like the relationship works or doesn't work based on like how you get along, compatible you are, listening to each other, like doing things together well. And so, yeah, they end up in like about, they hook up a lot more. 'Cause that's just like
Okay.
much easier when you're hot for men and women.
Yeah.
But then the like relationship quality is roughly the same.
Despite hooking up more, that's interesting. Well, that I don't get it quite because you see guys you know, is there some sort of outlier differentiation here? Like Jeff Bezos has a wife now who's way hotter than he is.
Yeah, well, so hotness, like I like to talk, get a bit more nerdy about like sexual marketplace value,
Mhm.
which maybe sounds like a very icky term. And that's what I call something like superficial attractiveness. And superficial attractiveness is basically everything you can tell about someone from like 10 seconds of looking at them. For women, it's just like mostly their looks and age. And for men, it's like their looks and then like markers of status and wealth. So, well, like Jeff Bezos, well, like if you're a celebrity, then like your like attractiveness in this sense is just look very, very high. Because
Mhm.
even like before looking at you for 10 seconds, people know like you're a rich celebrity.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Okay. So we're
but
not
yes,
we're not ranking
yeah, it's attractiveness.
necessarily.
It's like
Yeah.
slightly broader than like just looks, but it's specifically about like all the things that aren't really about being in a relationship with someone or even like interacting with them, but just what you see at a glance.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, and I think so. You do notice, and this is like one of my theories. You do notice like incredible compatibility. Like almost everyone you know was like a 7 dates a 7, a 5 dates a 5, a 10 dates a 10. Yeah, that's like a bit weird. And I think a big reason for this is because attractiveness is seen by everybody else. So everybody else judges you. And when people see a couple that's mismatched on attractiveness, they like really get riled up. Everybody has an opinion, everybody judges, everyone. Like, I think a lot of women really can't. Like, I have like friends who dated guys who were like conventionally hotter than them. They felt terrible. They felt insecure. They felt like all the other women, like, they're thinking, like, what's wrong with him? Is he fucked up in some way that he's like dating this girl who's like slightly less hot than he is? Um, or I bet I could steal him.
Mm.
But basically, you kind of feel this judgment from society. Like everybody said, "Oh, love is love," until they see a 6 to 8 and 8, and then people are like, "What's happening there?" There's like some famous example, like I don't know, Pierce Brosnan wife like gained a few pounds, but here's Pierce Brosnan, right? He's a 10. So if his
Yeah.
wife is anything less than a 10, it's going to be like tabloid material. Like, hey,
Mm.
a guy who's a 10 dating a woman who like gained 20 pounds is like that's subject for like a journalist to write a story now because
Yeah.
of this like really ingrained enforcement of like attractiveness compliance on everyone.
That's so interesting. The invisible rules. You were talking about the guy who dated Kim Kardashian. What's his name?
Pete Davidson, I think.
Yeah, Pete Davidson. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Like they're both celebrities. It sounds like celebrities are like whatever. They're like in their own weird galaxy. He's like a celebrity for I guess his comedic talent,
Mm.
or something, and she's a celebrity for like being very very hot on TV a lot.
Yeah.
Like oh no, even like among celebrities, like they're only allowed to date each other if they're both like celebrities for being very very hot, like Brad Pitt and Angelina, or probably some like younger examples that I don't know because I'm an old boomer,
Mhm.
millennial. Tom Holland and Zendaya.
Yep. Yep.
But, so yeah, they say it comes out for celebrities, but I do think, if you're with someone who's like very different attractiveness, you like walk down the street and you like, feel the glances from people, and it kind of drives people crazy. You really need, I think it's quite rare. Like both of you almost have to be like very oblivious to this sort of thing,
Mm.
this sort of social pressure to be able to date across a big attractiveness gap.
All right. Well, autistics, good news. You can date hotter people
Yeah.
whenever you want. Yeah, that's 85% of the rat community just covered, so we're good. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
But yeah, I think a lot of this, again, this was like the main topic I'm talking about is like all the ways that like kind of society influences you and enforces things in you. You can't just ignore it because like other people do exist and they like interact with you and those interactions matter. Like again, for dating, I think people like like you should train yourself to care less, because ultimately you're with your spouse forever. And like the people who maybe, thought that, or the story of how you met was a bit cringe, or there's some like mismatch between you, you don't actually interact with them that much, they don't affect you that much. See, you're walking through life, people judge you on things. The judgment is important. I mean, like the basic things, a guy walking in somewhere with like an attractive woman on his arm. Well, like maybe a big part of this impact is how other men look at you. But like, well, those other men are there, right? If you're gonna interact with them, they are gonna judge you and treat you differently based on, what they think of like the hotness of the woman that's with you. Some guys more, some guys less, but like, they exist. So like being completely oblivious to it, you need like some sort of like integrated view, as opposed to trying to get rid of the part of yourself that like cares about what kind of like the disembodied they, like people you don't know think about you. I don't think you can
Yeah.
quite do it. Like you can't just like force yourself to be. Oh, haven't had a point. Actually, I got mimetic desire, and I didn't read a lot of Gerard in the original. I read Luke Burgess's book, Wanting, which really just kind of gives a very like good overview of mimetic desire, really based on Gerard. And when he talks about people who are kind of like, have overcome mimetic desire, he talks about, this like guy who was a Michelin star chef and then decided he doesn't care about Michelin stars, so now he's just like, doing his own restaurant and refuses to be rated by Michelin. And, like, no, he cooks food for other people. Like he's not completely a slave to mimetic desire, but like the guy who's immune to mimetic desire is a schizophrenic in an asylum who hears
Yeah.
voices and throws his shit at the walls. Like
Yeah.
that's a guy who's like, whatever his desires come from, not from us,
Yeah.
not from society. Like we
Very
lock
true.
people,
Yeah.
really, we lock people like that up in a padded room.
Mhm.
And so, like the way to deal with mimetic desire is to like be aware of it, see where you can like navigate, squeeze between it, get more of like what your heart really wants. But like, I don't think you should like press a button to blind yourself to how other people judge you.
Yeah. And there's this thing about mimetic desires, right? One example that I heard from Jacob B's lecture was that all the tech guys who wear t-shirts, right? Like a lot of the startup owners, startup founders, they're worth $1 billion. They wear a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're free from mimetic desire. It's actually just that they're playing a different status game. Like if you have a t-shirt and you walk into a room full of guys with suits, subverting their status. You're saying all your fancy suits don't matter to me. I don't need to impress you because I'm impressive in my own right. I am the highest status person here because I'm not chained to this suit, right? So you're still playing a mimetic game. It's just it's a subversion of their mimetic game. And the only person, just like you said, who gets away from that really is a schizophrenic. So it's more important that we just acknowledge the mimetic game and then use it to our advantage.
Yeah, I think an advantage doesn't mean like an advantage over other people. Right,
Yeah.
like the guy walking with the t-shirt maybe is like trying to signal that like, oh, maybe like my startup idea is so great, you should all invest. Like I didn't even bother dressing up. And again, this also backfires. So when Sam Bankman-Fried was pitching the same story, he was pitching like a FTX to like really famous venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And during the pitch meeting, he was like playing a video game on his phone. And they took it as a positive signal, as opposed to signal this guy's like totally insane and unlike, industrial strength ADHD drugs. They're like, oh, he gives so few fucks. Like this business must be amazing, and the business was to like launder losses for his hedge fund. So, like the advantage is, actually, the advantage you should focus about is like, look, the stuff you like you really want deep in your heart, just like make you come alive, and you can like get more of those. Like society kind of like, doesn't really care about you getting or not getting it. At the margin, kind of the like forces will kind of set up so that you don't get them. Because it's just like a bit inconvenient for people if you're like a bit less predictable, if there's like too much energy coursing through you. So the advantage is like, getting like more of your true desires as opposed to like, I'm gonna subvert some signaling game to like get a higher valuation for my startup. Like I don't know, probably the deepest like the real like lack in your heart isn't gonna be filled by a higher valuation for your startup. But maybe I don't know. Some other holes will be, but
Yeah.
yeah, so like advantage is like a little bit worried because advantage kind of means over someone else. Call it more like satisfaction or joy or something. Like you can get joy if you like, you can find a lot of like joy in the gaps between mimetic desire.
Hmm.
Because stuff that are like mimetic, they're kind of like designed to basically give you like zero joy on net. Like you go to university, everybody tries to get a job at McKinsey. It's like, well, the job at McKinsey might be like kind of cool, but because everybody wants it, then like what it's gonna take to get it would be like difficult, like awful enough to kind of like offset the joy, right?
Hmm.
Like otherwise, even like more people would pile in. Like how much you'd have to like study, how much envy you'd get from your peers if you got it, how much stress you have to endure to get through it.
Jobs at Goldman Sachs are, I don't know if it was on your blog, but there was like a small survey from people who worked at Goldman Sachs, and it was terrible. It was like rate your quality of life before and after, and it went from like
Yeah.
8 to a 2 or something.
By the way, so you have like similar measures for like mental health, like quality before and after for grad school.
Oh,
And grad school,
interesting.
you're not making a ton of money either.
No.
But it's like it doesn't have to be even that prestigious. I think just a lot of people, they finish their undergrad, their bachelor's degree, and it's like, oh, some of the smartest kids in my class are like applying to grad schools. And so you get, this mimetic desire in you to also go to grad school. And in part because like so many like really smart, hard-working people want to go to grad schools kind of get away with, treating grad students horribly. And like people's mental health just like drops through the floor in grad school. And like when you're not even like getting that much, like in a lot of disciplines, you're not, the golden tech, like whatever, like save up some money, do some cocaine, grind some
Yeah.
spreadsheets. At least like you had some money saved up. Like mimetic desire can kind of be for things that aren't even like that amazing for you. Just because, oh, this is track setup or like a lot of like people that you feel competitive with because they're like smart and skillful end up attracted to it. You might like end up attracted to it also, even if it's not actually that like something that everybody wants, isn't it? Like if Rolex just became like a really crappy watch, it would
Yeah.
take a while maybe before people updated. And like it's easy to tell if your watch is good or bad. It's like hard to tell if the next 5 years of your career are good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that Rolex is, you even have to like retune them every so often because they go off. Like they're not even that good of a watch. they've just
Yeah, but no one really
rigged
cares
the
about having like a
prestige
very
game.
precise
Nobody
watch.
cares. Nobody gives a fuck.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
so much is a piece of jewelry. Like it can't really be bad.
Yeah,
Grad school
it's
can
true.
really be
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And
Grad school
people
can
you
definitely
date
be, and it
because
is.
like
Don't go to grad school. Why are you
yeah,
guys going to grad school? I mean, no, not always, but
yeah.
a lot of
And
times.
people you date because someone slightly hotter than you wants to date them also
Yeah.
might be not good. You shouldn't date them just because someone slightly hotter than you is attracted to this sort of person.
Which reminds me, on your blog, so your blog is Put a Num on It. Is that
Yeah.
right? .com? Yeah, great. So your wonderful blog, Put a Num on It, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, but it's all right. You mentioned 2 different kind of date me tweets that I really liked. I liked the comparison. Can you go into that?
I think this is like a really great illustration, Mimetic Desire. So I do want to say my blog is a bit on hiatus. The blog itself reflects a bit of my history, right? It started as Put a Number on it. It was a very like mathy rationalist blog. But that was almost 10 years ago. And then it became a post-grad dating blog. But I was just kind of stuck with the name. So now I'm just mostly on Twitter at Yashkaf and like I'm working on the dating book. But yeah, I have like an entire chat. I have a chapter about like, learning to want. I can start with those 2 tweets. One is you pull it up, I could have the direct quotes here.
Absolutely.
All right, so this girl tweeted, my dream boyfriend, 6 feet, 300 to 500,000 total compensation, very ambitious and driven, 27 to 33 years old, loves New York City, loves running and reading, loves me a lot. And like, okay, other than loves me a lot, maybe including that, those are all things. None of them are about the time they spend together. But they're all things that like other people can see, right? It's like the sort of boyfriend that looks good in you. Like those are all traits that like your friends, and I assume other friends are like very attractive, upper class, career girls in New York City are like, this is sort of like boyfriend we deserve. That's sort of boyfriend that like marks a girl as like, cool and high status in here. Like, it's like tall, makes like this much money, and it has to be like not trust fund baby, self-made. That was like a line there also.
Sorry, trust fund babies.
None of this is like about the relationship, and you get a sense for some of it is also like if you meet a guy like that, like what are you gonna tell him? Hey, I like you because you're tall and rich.
Mm.
This is kind of weird, right? Because like this list is not about him. This list kind of tells me what her friends think is high status,
Yeah.
but it doesn't tell me about like, what it's like to actually be dating her. And also, it kind of reads as like it reads as a list of exclusions. Like if you're a guy reading this, you're like, okay, I'm tall enough, I'm not rich enough. Okay, tall and rich enough, but I'm like 2 years older. And
I fit all of these criteria except that I inherited $500 million in a trust
Yes.
fund. That's too bad.
I guess I'm not gonna message.
Guess I'm not going to message.
Yeah. So my friend Lisa, she tweeted, new plan, find a husband. Then together start a vegetable garden, cook good food, smoke meats, build a chicken coop, plant fruit trees, make jam, bake sourdough, brew kombucha, play music, woodshop, go camping, read books, take a nap, make love. So the actual story of what happened is like I was actually like flirting with Lisa over DMs like just before she posted this in like August. And then I said like, oh, I'll be in your town in November. So I'll take you out on a date. And then like she posted this tweet in September. And by the time I made it over to her in November, she was like already in love with the guy who like read this tweet and responded to it and like would end up like marrying her now.
Oh,
So like
amazing.
this tweet summoned the husband to like go cross country to like live with her immediately. And the part like nothing in that tweet is about traits. It's all about like what you do together when no one else is watching you.
Mm.
And like other people can tell how tall it is. Other people can tell if like, he enjoys like, yard work.
Yep.
And so this sort of thing is like, because it comes from like what Lisa actually wants to do with her day, as opposed to how she wants to be seen by others, then it's also a lot more of an invitation. It's like, you as a guy, you read this, you're like, do I imagine myself being happy having a day like this? Or does it sound like not quite? So I think this is a much, I don't know, I think it's like a good reason why like this tweet, immediately summoned the husband for Lisa.
Yeah, it was a magic spell. It's like a Harry Potter spell. Accio husband.
Yeah.
I think also Lisa's tweet excluded a lot of men. Like, and I think that one of the important points there is that it excluded 95% of men, maybe like, maybe around 95, maybe more, but it found her, you only need to find one, right? Like you don't actually need to cast a gigantic net of tens of thousands.
Like you want to exclude the right person, right? Like you said, right? Cooper's tweet excludes the guy who's like great, except he inherited $500 million. And like, like excluding people who are Visakan Virasamy, who former guest on the Serene podcast, and I think the wisest philosopher writing today. He had a tweet that like, twice as many people want to date me, I'm happy. Half as many, I'm also happy. I have this mindset like if you're selecting for dating with actual agency, if you have like idea of what you want, it's clear to yourself, you have a clear vision of what the relationship is with the person, how you will spot that, then getting rejected is like kind of also a good outcome because that means it wouldn't have worked out anyway. Whereas if you don't actually have a sense of what you really want, you just kind of have a sense of like what someone like looks appropriate as a partner to you and all those superficial things, then like getting rejected is just like net bad. Like it's not like, oh, you dodge someone who's incompatible, you just like, well, they're like maybe superficially plausible, and now you have like one less person to choose from. If you like really focused, you know what you're selecting for. You have like a clear vision of what you want. Like either being rejected or like being accepted is kind of like,
just as good.
It's like the same thing. You're like just narrowing down the path to like your dream partner. But like you actually have to like have a sense of the dream partner, like either what they feel like to you or like what you want to do together. And so like I think it's like the first step to like, actually dating is like kind of figuring that out. Like what a perfect day with someone looks like. And like a shockingly small number of people do that. Like most people, if you look at their dating profiles, if you just ask them, they give you a list like, you know, she needs to be blonde, he needs to be 6 feet. And it's like, it's like
Mm.
not, it's like a very different sort of wanting.
I went on probably 50 dates in a couple of years. I was looking for a husband, and I would say I would just bring up a lot like that I wanted kids, like on the first or second date, because that's a deal breaker if you don't want kids. Like there is no point on having a second date if they're not interested in kids. If I was even potentially interested in them. And I found out later on that when I met my husband Elliot, he also said that to all the first dates. Like he asked them if they wanted kids. Like, and it's amazing to me when I hear about couples who are married and then they have a disagreement about whether like one person doesn't want kids, and it's like, how did you communicate so poorly that you got married without having this conversation? Like, it's amazing to me.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because I think we probably have some people don't really know, maybe when they're younger. But that's why I think I don't want kids, but then like, if you look in the right relationships, you realize you want kids with them.
Mm.
And since the reason I met, we had like a brief period where like she's going through a tough time. She's like, I actually don't know if like maybe like later, and then just like, it's kind of like particular like, difficult period in her life, just kind of brief ended, and we kind of went back to both. Yeah, like we both talked about it early, but they do, because other people don't know. Just like, tweeted yesterday something like quite banal about kids. I was just saying, if you're like around the age of 30 maybe, and you like look at your friends who have kids, and it looks like super stressful, right? They don't go out much, they don't get a lot of sleep, and it's like, well, because they're like parents of toddlers, which is the most difficult time. So, like when you're like a parent of like 10-year-olds, they look pretty cool. Like 10-year-olds are pretty independent and they're kind of fun to hang out with. Like you don't get to see that. Like if you wait to see your friends having fun with their kids, that's gonna happen when they're like in their late 30s. And
Yeah.
then like, you're like in a real time crunch. So like don't over index and like just parenting toddler just because, if you're a young person, all the parents are parents of toddlers. And then, like what's funny about this discourse is like whether you tweet this like very like banal take like don't over index on toddlers or start talking about like cat ladies or something, the responses are exactly the same. People from both
Really?
sides just like get super deranged and yell at each other.
People got angry at that tweet?
Not really at the tweet. They just kind of like they have like angry like things they say, and they just come out whenever there's like anything about the decision to have kids that gets like more than like 1,000 eyeballs. Someone will like pile in and call them crotch goblins, and someone will pile in and like tell people how they're like the end of their bloodline and will die alone, and they just like
I love it.
again,
I
it's just
love it.
there's like some topics that like anything you say about them just gets enough eyeballs, you get like the same exact like copy pasted like flame war in the replies.
Amazing. I love the chaos. I don't even mind where it comes from. Speaking of which, you had a good point. You had an interesting point about the difference in dating between, or I guess between left and right wing tribes. Maybe it
There's
was
quite a few
yeah.
about the sex ratios, or one thing I would say,
Yeah.
we were talking before about like compatible like skill sets between
Yeah.
in a marriage. I think there's a mistake that like more like trad people make, is they think, oh well, we know like what has compatible skill sets. Is like the woman does all the woman things and the man does all the man things. And I think that actually like, doesn't quite work. I think there's like very few people who are like 100% masculine, 100% feminine. It's like if you're super tied to this sort of like gender binary and like the exact skills you have, like that's kind of a mistake. You actually have to like think what your actual weaknesses and your actual strengths are, as opposed to like, well, I'm a guy, so I'm gonna do all the guy things.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, is washing dishes a guy thing or a woman thing? Like I don't know. My wife kind of feels icky about like water and soap.
Mm.
She can't even like touch dirty dishes without gloves. So I just do the dishes
Mm.
because she just hates it. Like I didn't consult the like traditional wisdom of like is that the manly thing to do or the womanly thing to do. I'm like, yeah.
Very
One
true.
thing we were talking about kind of like ratios, and I think like in the culture war, it's kind of like the progressive, more woke or more progressive you call it and whether you're on that side or not. It's like a bit more like pro women, anti men, more like anti men, because most of the culture wars about being anti stuff.
Mm.
It's like the anti white and anti black stuff. There's no pro anyone.
There's no pro. It's all
Yeah.
about who your enemies are. It doesn't really matter what you're doing for the world.
Yeah. So like, yeah, like some weird dynamics where like, people become really progressive politically when they are quite young, like usually in universities, like in a college stage. But also if you're a college stage woman, you have like at least a level of sexual interest. And so if you're a very politically progressive group, then you kind of talk about the patriarchy and how all men suck and they have like all this power and they use like oppress women and they all like dream of subjugating women and like being mean to them. And they like enable each other in awful behaviors. And you know, if a woman does something bad, it's because she was forced to it by like this horrible system she has to overcome. They're just gonna like naturally like select for like fewer guys in your community and more women because a lot of guys are like, I don't like this vibe. Makes me feel bad.
Yeah.
Like, I think one dynamic that happens is like if you're, let's say you had like a group of like young progressives in university who are like a little bit anti-men, and it's like, you know, there's like 11 women there and 9 guys. And like, okay, whatever. Like, so it's like slightly skewed, but it's fine. And you know, those 11 women, they have like interest from older guys or something. But now, like when they all get a bit older, and so some of them like paired up and married. So instead of 11 and 9, it's now like 7 and 5. And then like of those 5 guys, like one is gay and one is dating a centrist, and one is like, you know, dating like a 20-year-old progressive because he actually just likes 20-year-olds. And now, like, oh, you can be like a woman. You self-selected yourself into. You have this very hard rule, not even like an explicit rule, but like you know you will not date someone who's not like politically progressive, who doesn't share those things because they're so core to your identity. But then because of this thing, like as you get older, suddenly the like ratio gets like, worse and worse against you. And the weird thing that happens when you have like women outnumbering men so much in those spaces, men can get away with murder. They can like, you know, like demand more and do less and like be a bit meaner and like, get away with stuff. And of course, like you have a mirror image of it. So you go to any like red pill forum, and a bunch of guys are talking about hypergamy, how like women only want the like best high status guys and wouldn't even like look at that. I'm like, yeah, you scared away all the women from here. The few women who are left, of course, you know, if they can stomach, you know, like your misogyny, they're gonna get their pick. They're like, oh, forget the misogynist guy. At least I'm gonna get, you know, most handsome and famous and richest misogynist guy. You know, like hanging out here with you all. Because like, hypergamy women, you know, they can't be satisfied by anything. They're like so nasty. I'm like, yeah, like, don't select yourself by your politics into a horrible dating market, and especially those in red. Like, I don't know, if you look at a hobby that's like very male, okay, you can like pick up another hobby. And you're not gonna like find a woman, I don't know, playing like trading crypto. So go do something else. But politics, I think, become like so central to people's identities and shape basically like everyone they interact with socially. That is very hard to break out of. You know, this like very like sex skewed because of politics. Dating space.
Yeah, it's interesting that you just pointed out there like it's such a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. Like you actually select for only the guys who are going to treat you worse or, you know, will like if he's oftentimes if he's I don't know, a lot of people say this, but like if they're really great, if they're really high value and a good person, they're just taken off the market really quickly.
Yeah.
And so like if you're in a political group and that's kind of your entire life, which I mean, that's a shame. I'm sorry if you are, because that sucks, dude. Whoever you are, if all of your friends talk about politics all the time, rip,
Yeah,
man.
that's part of
But
right. So people say like, oh, male feminists, they're like really abusers. And it's like, well, no, they're not. I mean, they're probably like, I don't think they're more likely if at all. But just like, yeah, the good ones just get married.
Yeah.
Like the male feminists who are like still single, like in their, you know, late 30s and dating women exclusively in like very progressive spaces. Well, there's some reason why, like, you know, they're still on the market.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Interesting. I wanted to go back to a point actually, because it just reminded me. We were talking about having kids a little bit earlier, and I heard you talk in another podcast about how It was you mentioned the reason why, or sorry, the biggest correlation with high birth rates in countries is SSRI prescriptions. Is that?
I don't think
I
this
think.
was me. I don't have
Oh,
a strong opinions on SSRIs in kids.
okay. Because I think you were talking about you were talking about how in Israel they're like way above birth rate, and then
Well, I think there's. Well, I don't know about SSRI specifically. I do think my
okay,
sense. So I've written even before I had kids. I've written a bit about I wrote a blog post about the philosophy of antinatalism.
Mhm.
Famous philosopher David Benatar. I read a few little of his stuff. I'm like, this philosophy kind of doesn't make sense. It's kind of bad. No one actually believes in negative utilitarianism. There's some economic arguments that are also bad. This kind of like very. And a bunch of people got mad. It was sharing like the antinatalism subreddit, and a bunch of people got mad at them. And then I realized like I don't want kids because like someone convinced me with philosophical or economic argument. Like that would seem kind of insane. And none of the people arguing with me were convinced by arguments either. I think they kind of have a sense for like whether they want kids or not, and then the arguments are downstream. And so one very common thing you hear, is like, especially for like more left-wing people, is, well, how can you have kids like the planet is burning climate change?
Mm.
My sense of it is very much, and I kind of like super confident in this. It's hard to get inside other people's minds, but my sense of it is like they have a gut feeling that like they're not really in control of life. Life's like very anxious. It's very chaotic. They're not really stable. Not really confident, and like that they're gonna like have careers that they're good at and like manage their lives well. Kind of like the world is like always intruding on them with like new demands and like crazy shit is happening. Their like attention is hijacked by a million things, and they don't really have a grip on things. And so it seems like introducing kids is just like, completely unthinkable. Like, how can you add even more chaos to this? But then you can like there's other thing you say to people, or you tweet that like, I feel like I don't have a grip in life. It's too chaotic. Like the way it kind of comes out is like, oh, well, climate change, because climate change is the sort of thing that feels like, oh, it's just a source of like chaos and like anxiety and bad things around the corner.
Mm.
But yeah, maybe like for I don't know. Again, this is kind of a wild outer theory. Maybe like a way to think about Israel is like Israelis are maybe less stressed out about like very vague things that may or may not happen, and you can't really do anything about, like I don't know, AI or like climate change or whatever, because you have like much more direct threats that you're worried about.
We hear
But also
bombs
those
going
threats are
off
like,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah, but like you have like actual agency about it, right? Like most Israelis have been in the armed services, so they've been in like the IDF. They feel like, well, our army is pretty good. We have the capable people, everywhere. This is like, okay, those gonna shoot at us from the north. We're gonna have to like put like missile defense here and maybe go into there and like, but so even if like maybe like the threat of like Hezbollah and Iran and the Houthis is like actually more real than the threat of like crop collapse because of climate change or something.
Yeah.
But at least it's like, hey, you're doing something about it. You're not just like vaguely worried. So it doesn't like fit into the sort of like inchoate anxiety because it's like more real and tangible. And you're all like doing something about this together. You all like go join the army and do your reserve duty and like celebrate the troops. It's like, okay, well, like I can have kids because I can like tell if this is getting better or worse. Whereas if your anxiety is about things that like you don't really get a sense of. So again, like I know statistics about SSRIs in Israel. Like I know probably like SSRI subscriptions have more to do with like the culture of doctors
Mm.
and psychiatrists, and not just like the underlying level. 'Cause, like, a lot of people are kind of depressed or have negative emotions. Then in some cultures it's like go take a nap, and some it's like, okay, here's 20 milligram Prozac.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe I misheard you then. So why do you think Israel has such a high birth rate?
yeah, but again, like my best sense is kind of this sort of again,
Just
there's
because, yeah,
I mean, there's a
it's
lot of like observant Jews who are religious, but even secular Israelis, most of them have 3 kids. That's like the model number for secular families, and I think in part it's like it's a quite high trust society with a lot of solidarity. Like you're more connected to reality, and I think especially when like a lot of your troubles are external. Like I've talked to a lot of Korean friends, like who I know in Korea has kids, and in part, like all your stress in South Korea is internal. It's about competitions for like the exams to get into schools to get into the big companies. maybe if you're like in a big city in the US, like all the things that feel like maybe existential risk to you are also like they're like against your neighbors or they're like very far from you. Like you don't actually know where China is or what AI is. I don't know, maybe just like historical continuity. Maybe like Israel just like once you have established a kid friendly vibe, it tends to persist.
Yeah.
Like it's like if you go to a really nice restaurant in Tel Aviv, there's gonna be little kids there sitting in the high chairs and making like a bit of kid noise. And no one blinks at this because it's just like a country with kids in. And if you go to a fancy restaurant in like Vienna, there's just no kids. You like realize there's like giant public spaces, there's like no kids. And if you're like the only person who brings a kid there, you're gonna feel like really weird and judged.
Yeah.
And it's like very hard to like change the culture to like tell everyone like, hey, we're just gonna be like cool with kids everywhere. Is that okay? Okay.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wonder if actually the external threat that you're talking about, I wonder if there's some evolutionary psychology reason. Like exam stress is stressful, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm going to die. And maybe if I feel like I'm going to die or like a person feels like they're going to die, they kind of biologically have more kids because life feels in danger. So they have to, maybe there's some sort of biological imperative to increase the population if you feel like your life is in danger.
Maybe. I don't know.
We need
like,
to threaten more people's lives, is what I'm saying.
Like Israelis like live longer than almost any other country, right? It's like right at the top of like life expectancy behind just like Japan and Sweden or something. Like Israel's enemies aren't very competent. And pretty much in most countries, like the main thing that determines like how much you die is like, like how fat you are. And then stuff like alcoholism. And then like way down the list is stuff like internal crime. Like the murder rate in like, countries that have high murder rates is like way bigger than like deaths in conflict for any country that's not like Ukraine, where like you actually fight in a major war against like the total number of like Israelis who died like in the armed services or like in terror attacks is not that high every year, right? Like if Israelis just like started like having like half an extra alcoholic drink a week, that would like have a much bigger impact. No, like they like live long and pretty safely because the crime is pretty low. The weather is nice. There's not like a huge drug problem. And it might be something also. So Israelis do have like a bit of a siege mentality. It's not just like about the people fighting us, but like in various like almost every country in the world, it's like Israel is in the news. Like almost every country in the world, even people like don't know where it is in the map, they have like very strong opinions about it. A lot of it is like negative, right? Like Israelis get like really psyched for the Olympics and watch like really obscure sports like women's judo because I think they care more like they're like much more nationalistic because it feels like, oh, we look special people, right? Like nobody thinks of like Botswanans or like the Portuguese a lot. Like they're just gonna live their life. But for some reason, the people in Botswana in particular think about Israel a lot. And so I don't know, maybe like Israelis feel like they're not fungible with other people.
Yeah.
Like we are. And again, like you have a religion that tells you you're God's chosen, and a lot of Israel is quite religious. You kind of look at your history and like, okay, this is like kind of wild. Like we just like came here like 100-something years ago. It was a lot of like people who hate us in some swamp and desert, and we like built this thing here, and everyone in the world has opinions on us. Yeah, I don't know, I think that's the sort of vibe. But no, so, like, I was born in the Soviet Union, and my parents had me, and they were like certain they were just gonna have one kid because that's like all you have in the Soviet Union. And then they just came to Israel, and like my dad like got an assistant professorship at the university, and he looked around at all his professor peers, and they all had 3 kids. And he's like,
And
well,
so
I guess we
mimetic
have 3
desire
kids.
took
And
over?
now like now like my parents, I have 2 siblings. Kind of like the immediate reason is you kind of like look around. I don't know. I guess they were like mimetically pressured into having 3 kids.
I've heard that the biggest predictor of having more kids is whether or not your friends have more kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I mean, we're really like trying to pressure our friends, not by talking to them about kids, but just like inviting them over and making sure when we invite them over, like, my toddler's in a good mood and she's like looking super cute and she's playful. And that's like, the only effective pro-natalist propaganda you can have is just like
Oh my God,
have people
absolutely.
interact with your kids.
I was doing a dinner at my house at Elliot's parents' house actually, and our nieces and nephew were there, and some of my friends came over and they were just being super cute and like just having hilarious banter. One of my friends walked away and he was like, I think I understand why people have kids now. Like totally changed his mind, like on the spot. Like I think he wants to have kids now. Just like he just saw how fun it was to have kids, and he just was never exposed to that before.
Yeah. So coming out of COVID in like early 2021, I think when like the vaccines were on the horizon, I was like, okay, like a lot of social things I was part of kind of died off in COVID. I'm gonna like restart them, but with like more agency. And I actually like, surveyed a lot of my friends. Like I surveyed like 50 people. Hey, what sort of like social hangouts do you want? Sort of like parties, what sort of events? And then like a lot of women in the like mid and late 20s were like, I want any social situation where it's I can interact with kids. And they all said that basically like they haven't spent time around little kids like ever, like since they were kids themselves. And so like I think I organized a party where it was like a few of my older friends who have kids, and then like all my friends were like women in their mid-20s. So it was like a safari tour. Like you just go and it's like, can I give him this toy? It's like, yeah, just vibe with the kid, right? If the kid like
Yep.
gets mad at you, they'll walk away. And I think that's maybe part of why like a lot of the discourse around this is like kind of insane, because like, people don't have like a lived experience, which again is like,
Yeah.
different in Israel. In Israel, like there's just kids everywhere. You just like run into them.
Hmm.
Again, maybe it's like not like you don't see kids at home, but like it's very hard to like live isolated from kids. You go to the beach, there's kids running everywhere. You kind of see them interact with their families. You get a sense. Kids of all kind of ages. Yeah, if you like, you graduate college, come to New York, you live in a neighborhood where everyone's like, they're like mid-20s going out to bars and stuff. Oh, there's like actually like almost no kids around.
Hmm.
And you don't see them that much. Somebody pushes a stroller past you on the street. That's not a sense. So yeah, just trying to give people like kid exposure.
In Israel, it
Uh,
seems like there's a lot more agency in kids as well. Like you see a 7-year-old pushing a 2-year-old in a stroller just down the road with like no
yeah,
supervision
I
in
would
sight.
pick up my brother from like kindergarten when I was like 8 and he was 3,
Yeah.
or like a bit before that, walk him home. Yeah, it's fine. Like I think everyone in Israel was like, okay, we need to set up a society that's like, well, we need to make sure crime is low enough so people aren't worried about it, and then we need to make sure that like drivers are aware to like not run over little kids crossing the street by themselves, so kids can like have more freedom to move. And then we need to like create a culture of like people wanting to have kids around. So like a lot of people like, again, try to have the sort of like top down ideas of how we encourage more kids. And okay, I actually have like no idea
Hmm.
what would work or doesn't.
Hmm.
And that's the thing like I'm attracted to writing about dating. I feel like a lot of people I'm actually a political pacifist, where like I have very like little confidence that I know how to like fix things top down. And again, even for kids, like look, all I do is like try to just make sure like my daughter's like in a good mood when she meets my friends.
Yeah.
I don't really like write a lot about this, etc. In dating, a lot of people kind of have the story that like dating is hard because of some top-down reason, because of like the patriarchy or microplastics or feminism or anti-feminism or something. I'm like, no, like it's almost all like bottom up. It's almost all like, you gotta have like a different alignment with yourself around, your relationship with society, your relationship with like the parts of you that you hide from themselves. Though your one dream partner that like if you're focused on them, that gives you direction to like start doing things. So like a lot of directions in the right, like economics and stuff. Like, well, whatever my opinions on economics are, I feel like they don't matter.
Hmm.
Like no one's
No,
gonna
not at
listen
all.
to them, and I probably like not confident like I know what needs to happen. So even like when I wrote about COVID, then found out it like impacted policy somewhere. But like no, I don't want to impact policy. I want like I feel like that's like I'm kind of clueless. But I'm like okay, but you know, like I believe
Hmm.
much more. Oh, someone individually can read this. They'll read something, it resonates. They're like, oh yeah, I think I was doing that thing, and that's like kind of silly. I should pay attention to this. And then
Yeah,
yeah,
Kat Woods talks about this a lot. She was a guest on my podcast a while ago, but she's been talking about this a lot lately of like she's started in like 4 charities that are still running, and she says constantly it's very, very hard to figure out what will actually work. Like everything you do has all these massive downsides if you're doing something at a large scale. And like it's really hard to figure out what won't have second order effects that are detrimental. So I mean, for almost everyone, I think trying to understand the economy is probably absolutely useless. But introducing your kids to your friend when your kid's in a good mood is something you can see the impact of immediately.
yeah. Well, I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I respect effective altruists a lot, and effective altruists are very much trying to like sit and figure this out. But I'm not really an effective altruist, again, because just like my own personal inclination to like not. And most of my disagreements with effective altruists is like, oh no, you guys should like take a decade to just like actually try to figure stuff out, as opposed to like, okay, we spent 2 weeks thinking about this. Malaria nets, AI alignment, let's go.
Mhm.
Let's get publicity and stuff. Like, you know, I would kind of almost want like effective altruism to be like a secret monastic order
Yep.
that just like, you know, studies things kind of like completely anonymously.
Mhm.
So like effective altruists, you know, would kind of maybe like listen to me and say, look, that's like scope and sensitivity. You're a capable person who's like really smart and has like an online reach. You can like actually have impact on top down things. And there are like examples of no, like I do think, you know, like handing out bed nets in like Africa that keep people from getting malaria, or like developing the malaria vaccine or something.
Mhm.
It's like massive top down win. But it's just like, I don't know, my own vibe isn't aligned to it.
Even that Kat's talked about that. Like you give bed nets to people in malaria, and then you see them being used for like fishing nets. You know,
Yeah,
next
it's
year,
fun.
and almost no one uses them. And it's like, ah, well, I mean, I guess
Yeah,
they can fish better now. That's cool. I mean,
yeah, and I haven't like looked at the. I don't know. Like when I was like, you know, a few years ago, I like I even like did fundraisers and donated to like Africa and to AI safety. But so like a lot of the actually like effective altruism I think I do is like once in a while I like meet someone online who clearly seems like they're like stuck living in some like small redneck town or like in some foreign country. And I'm like, hey, here's a plane ticket. You should come to New York and meet my friends. Right? This like, it's gonna cost me a bit of money, but like the returns to you might be like 100x. Where
yeah,
you should not be living in, you know, some shithole, but like in a place where your people are. Um, so,
absolutely,
like I'm very
huge.
happy effective altruists exist, but then I'm kind of doing my own bottom up thing. That's not trying to. Like a lot of people have like ideas about like what policies we should change around dating. Should we get rid of no fault divorce, or have more fault in divorces, or whatever? Fault everyone who like I don't know.
Yeah,
A lot of the especially like in dating, like whenever you change norms, it's kind of trying to squeeze like a very soft balloon. It like squeezes somewhere else. Right? Like people talk about, well, you can flirt with people at work now because like Me Too and HR, and you're like, no, the amount of flirting at work is like a constant. It's just a human constant. It's just that like now like very like subtle things that like a man might say to a woman before like nobody would have noticed them because the woman would literally like, you know, be told they have like nice tits 5 times a day. And now because like nobody can do that anymore, but now like, oh, every like, you know, casual glance. So it's like, well, it's like better for some people, right? It's like if you're like very sexually aggressive, it's like harder for you in the Me Too era. If you're kind
Mm.
of a nerd and you know, but you're like maybe like very like sensitive to small signs, it's actually easier. But no, people like are still like horny when they go to work and they're still like lonely and they want to meet someone. So like just flirting is gonna look different. And flirting always has to be like plausibly deniable.
Mm.
Right? The same for any sort of thing. Like my friend Reagan made this point, like if you have like no fault divorce, then like people also get married younger because the risk is lower. She was married young and divorced, and like divorce always sucks, but like it wasn't like, you know, she was able to do it, and now she's like engaged again to a guy she's like much like happier with. And so like she only got to do that because there's no fault divorce. So like she could take the risk and get like married at 20 years old.
Yeah, okay, yep, makes sense. I wonder if she was calculating that risk at the time, but yeah,
Well,
maybe
you
she
get a sense.
was.
Like if you really knew that, like, no, it's a Catholic wedding, you can't get out of it. Then
Yeah,
like,
you can't leave.
let's wait 3 years, and in those 3 years, you will like found out that like that
Mhm.
guy's not. But yeah, again, because like so much of dating kind of happens in like the shadows of our subconscious, and also the shadows of society. It's like you really can't like outside top down things can't really like shape it too much. And sometimes like a lot of things people say, oh, this makes dating like easy for women and hard for men, or vice versa. That makes no sense because it's kind of like the singles is kind of a market in the sense that like if dating like was made really hard for women, right? If we like legalized ass pinching again or something, and women like really hate it or something, I don't know. We decided like, no, women have to pay on first dates
Okay, yeah,
by law,
it's the law.
and it's
Yeah,
like not a huge thing, but like kind of sucks if you're a girl because like you want to tell if a guy is rich and you also want to like save a bit of money.
Mhm.
Like it wouldn't change that much, because like, well, some women will just like start dating a bit less because it's like a bit worse, and then because there's gonna be like fewer women on the market, then like, for the ones who are, it would be easier. And then like, well, guys don't pay on the first date anymore, so they'll have to like perform more oral sex to make up for it or something. But, like at the end, it has to be kind of in balance. And so, like, so much of dating discourse is about like, how do we as society change the rules? I'm like, doesn't matter at all. Like, you can like really break it if you, I don't know, introduce like some really insane things, but like on the margin, it's fine.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
everyone
that
became
makes
woke and crazy. Cool. It's easier to like identify the people who aren't crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone became a misogynist in this space. Cool. Well, now it's like, if a guy is like willing to counter signal that, he's like really.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. I think I might wrap up here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on. And
Yeah, that's a good thing.
everyone, check out Put a Num on It. What a good blog. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It's a bit of a. I should maybe put the sign and put the name on it. That's like, hey, this is probably like an archive for now. I mean, people probably tell
Yeah.
it hasn't been updated for a year.
Yeah. Well, they can check out Yashkaf on Twitter.
That's
And
the
how do you
thing.
spell it again?
YASHKAF. And yeah, so I'm quitting my job this week and then gonna try to actually write a book.
Nice.
But
When
if
do you
follow
think the
me on
book's coming
Twitter,
out?
every time I have a good idea for a book, I just tweet it out.
Sweet.
So if you like follow me on Twitter, you'll probably get most of it.
Yeah. Good. And
Save yourself $20 when the time comes.
you can find people saying the word crotch goblin and then getting offended at the word crotch goblin as well. So that's pretty fun. Definitely follow him.
Yeah, I mean, I like drama and conflict and find it funny. So that's why I love Twitter. I don't get upset at anything, but I get some weird here.
As long as I'm not directly involved, I love conflict. It's the best. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.